James Wood's follow-up appearance on Later with Bob Costas from April 23rd, 1992, focused upon films that had controversial subjects and raised people's ire, and 3 decades ago were thought to be politically incorrect. And that subject starts getting talked about 30 years ago. They talk about the film Holocaust with Meryl Streep and whether it's ever appropriate to present that sad chapter in history. We talked about Oliver Stone's movies, Salvador and JFK, and telling stories that people don't want told. And he even talked about the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings and about proto-cancel culture.
Thanks for staying up later. We're back with James Woods, who was here last night, and we continue on with Holocaust. Let's start there. I would guess that's probably the time when most Americans got their first look at you that registered. Even though you'd been in pictures, that was where it registered, right? Fair to say?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it was a great experience. I remember I was standing in the gas chamber at Mauthausen with Meryl Streep. And she said, I mean, you know, the effect those places have on you, words are not adequate to describe, obviously. And one of the people, one of them, this one man who was in the show with us, had in fact been both in Auschwitz and Buchenwald and had escaped, and was still getting a disability pension from the West German government at the time, before the wall came down, obviously, because he had been beaten by the Gestapo, and he had to have a series of operations throughout his life because of something that happened to his back. And I said, what is it like to come back here and put on those striped pajamas and so on? And he said, it's so numbing that I can't figure out my response yet. But I remember Meryl saying, she said, if this thing isn't as good as we hope it's going to be, she said, we're going to go like to hell. I mean, this has to be brilliant, or they just can't air it, you know. And luckily it was, in fact, I thought, a rather truly powerful and committed presentation of this story. I mean, even though it was done in a miniseries format and so on, the impact it had, and it was a great lesson. In terms of, I mean, for one of the things that happened is the statute of limitations on Nazi war crimes was voted to be extended indefinitely in West Germany after the screening of Holocaust in West Germany. So, you know, you feel kind of proud that you did this thing for artistic reasons and for, I won't say entertainment reasons, but in the purest sense of the word, that is to say it was a story that was told to move people emotionally, whatever the definition of pure entertainment is. I mean, it was done in that venue, it was done on television, so to speak, but it did in fact enlighten people. And it did, in fact, have a political impact in that statute of limitations was altered to go indefinitely, because it was going to be up, I think, in the mid-'80s. And when they showed it there, they extended it.
They've eaten you.
I'm alive.
Your hands.
They made sure that I would never draw again. Inga. You can't heal them. They say you get used to it. It's not true.
Please don't tell me anymore.
Elie Wiesel was on the show, and I asked him about dramatic presentations pertaining to the Holocaust. And he feels ambivalently at best about them, because he says no matter how committed the producers, actors, actresses, no matter how good their intentions, the best presentation trivializes the reality.
From Elie Wiesel's point of view, yes, I understand that he says that anything might, I would take exception to the word trivializes, because that was certainly nobody's intention, you know, and so on. He may be have such tunnel vision, as he should, because this is one of the great tragedies in the history of humankind. He may feel that he has such an understanding of this issue, and he's so into it, he may in fact have a kind of tunnel vision in terms of how important it is to keep some awareness of this story alive, because people do forget. Now, he's dedicated his life to this, so he's never going to forget. And sad to say, most Jewish families in America and around the world or descended from or related to victims of the Holocaust. But you would be amazed at how many people are just not aware of this issue. And so I'm proud to say that that particular program, for example, happened to have enlightened a great number of people. I mean, you know, as an actor, you have a tremendous advantage over anybody else, over the studios, the networks, the agents, the producers, and so on, because people come up to you and say what they feel because you're the recognizable one. I can't tell you the number of people who have come up to me and said, thank God for Bill W., what it did, you know. I mean, I was an alcoholic, I am an alcoholic, but now I'm recovering, and, you know, because I saw that show, and I didn't even know it was possible. There are people out there who have never heard of AA, believe it or not, who have now since benefited by it because Hallmark was gracious enough to let us make this program about the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous, for example. And there were a lot of people who simply, I had a guy call him, talk to me, came up to me and said, he said, I used to hate black people. He was from the Deep South, not that, you know, that stereotype is true anymore. I mean, a lot of people from the Deep South are, in fact, very liberal and very civil rights oriented and so on, but he happened to have been from the Deep South. And he said, you know, I was a racist and didn't realize it. And he said, it wasn't until I saw the Holocaust and saw what bigotry can do, what its insane but nonetheless logical extension can do to humankind, that I realized that I'm all wrong. And he said the first thing I did was start to try to mend bridges with a whole race of people who are my fellow Americans that I just had never thought to treat as human beings. You know, so I mean, if you can make a white bigot come around and become a humanist because you've told a story about what the Nazis did to the Jews and others, then it's worthwhile. And if it's been trivialized, then A, I don't think it has been, and B, even if it has to some extent, according to Elie Wiesel, the impact on the other hand and the results and the rewards on the other hand are so worth it that it's, you know, maybe you have to break a few eggs to make a very important sociological omelet, so to speak. I think it's time to cut some more tie. Hold on a second.
Now
I scared myself.
We're back to last night. No, take any section you'd like. And really, by the end of the program,
I actually do like, but I just got to get just a little more.
By the end of the program, we'll be to the knot. Thank you.
So there.
It becomes more attractive. Sorry, I just by the moment
scared myself being so academic.
You've had, you know, several television roles. A lot of them had an impact. You like the way this was? A lot of them had an impact.
Nice to have a little bris in the middle of talking about all this stuff.
You've won Emmys, and usually the people on television, whether it's the victim of the Holocaust, whether it's Bill W. In that television movie, whether it's the guy in Immediate Family, which I guess was a cable.
No, Immediate Family was a feature.
Oh, it was a feature. I didn't realize that. Yeah. But you've played enough people who were sympathetic, and television, especially successful miniseries like Holocaust or the My Name is Bill W. thing, reaches more people than even the most successful feature films, and yet people still associate you with the sociopathic guys you've played.
Well, no, I don't think that's true, actually.
You don't think it's true?
No. I mean, I think it was like up to maybe 5 years ago, but not anymore. That's not my experience anymore.
You think you've diversified enough that the palette is more complete?
Well, I always had diversified. It's just that, you know, I was lucky enough to get a couple of tremendously great roles. I mean, The Onion Field and Once Upon a Time in America, and a movie called Bestseller, which, though it didn't do great at the box office, for some reason has become an amazing cult favorite around the country, from video, I guess, and cable. And they were just three terrific roles of really delicious villains. And I mean, you know, we always want to remember our villains more than our heroes in a way, because they are, you know, more exciting and different and, you know, outsider. I mean, it's why people like to read true crime stories and so on. And I think that they had an impact, so people sort of think that way, you know. And, so there was a bit of that. But now, you know, with Straight Talk and Hard Way and, you know, things like Promise and Bill W. and Immediate Family, I mean, all Salvador, you know, I mean, that character was, you know, finally a positive character, you know, even though he was a little rough around the edges, to say the least. But that's pretty much changed. And it's good, because one of the reasons I never did a television series, for example, is, A, I didn't have to, because I had a, thank God, a terrific film career, but I just never wanted to play the same character. I mean, diversity, or diversification, I should say, has been the... has been something that's sort of high on my list of priorities in my career.
God. Oh, Jesus, God. John, you got the magic shot. You got it.
Didn't Oliver Stone want to cast you in a different role in Salvador, and you kind of maneuvered your way into the role of the journalist guy, the Richard Boyle, I think his name was?
Richard Boyle character. Yeah, originally another terrific actor was pretty much set to play Boyle, and because of religious reasons, he had an objection to some of the language and the violence, but it's pretty hard to tell the story of the American involvement in El Salvador in the 80s without a great degree of violence, sadly, and the language was just sort of part of it. And I was up for the part that Jim Belushi played. And Oliver said to me, "You don't seem like a B personality." Not that Jim Belushi is, but the sidekick, that character, Dr. Rock. And I said, "Well, there's an easy solution to that. Why don't you let me play the A guy, you know?" And Oliver's wife, Elizabeth, who's a brilliant and wonderful and exciting woman, I think she's really his, the power behind the throne, if I do say so. And she had sitting at the table, and she said, "Oliver, he's right. If you want to make a great movie, you should go with what your instinct says, and I think your instinct, knows that this is the way to do it." And so Oliver called the actor, who's somebody I know and admire greatly, and said, "There's somebody who doesn't have any of these restrictions, and how would you feel about, just having a parting of the ways at this early stage?" And he said, "Yeah, I think it would be better because I'm not comfortable playing the part." So there was a great deal of serendipity involved, that this wonderful actor was willing to let the part go for his own reasons, and then I was able to step in.
Did you have a good sympathetic relationship going with Stone, or was it difficult?
I've always, you have to understand something. Anybody who wrote that script, which Oliver did, is like A-OK in my book. And Oliver and I fought like cats and dogs on that show, but we fought about all the right stuff. What it was about, what the character was about. There was nothing positive in the end of the movie, and I wanted to at least get a roll of film through that the John Hoagland-based character that John Savage played had taken, just before he's killed in Salvador, although he was actually killed elsewhere than the scene that we showed. We argued about those things, but it was arguing like two people who really cared about, it'd be like a truly loving husband and wife who are arguing about what's best for their children. It's like the things we were arguing about were like the right things. We weren't arguing about like profit participation and, what color the Venetian blinds were in the motorhome. We were arguing about, what the movie was about. And in fact, Oliver has since offered me 3 other movies of his. And for various reasons, I wasn't able to do them. Other commitments or whatever. But I'm sorry to see Oliver get bashed so much in the press because he is a great artist. He's somebody I genuinely care about. We had a falling out over JFK because there's a part he wanted me to play, and I didn't want to play that particular part.
Who did he want you to be?
I never like to say because another wonderful actor played the part, and I always think it's wrong to sort of say, well, I was offered that part.
So, everybody's guessing.
But it wasn't a big, they were all cameo parts, But I just didn't want to play that particular part. And it just didn't work out that it happened. And there was, I think, a little while where we were... there was just some bad feeling, but we're so used to that with each other. We're like sort of siblings who argue all the time, But I would walk to the ends of the earth to work with Oliver. I just think he's a brilliant, dedicated, incredibly socially conscious and imaginative filmmaker, and I consider him one of my best friends, and I really love him. And there's almost nothing we could do to each other that would hurt our friendship or hurt our artistic relationship. And I'm hoping to work with him again and spend more time with him again.
Let me ask you to make a public assessment here. For whatever my opinion is worth, I thought that Oliver Stone should have won for Best Director because of the scope and the difficulty of pulling it all together.
It was a very difficult job.
With JFK. But that having been said, like millions of other people, I have serious misgivings about the extent to which he envisions this conspiracy, about playing fast and loose with certain things. And so what I'm asking you is, in your experience with him, does he let his passion cloud his judgment to an extent that is counterproductive?
Well... You're asking the wrong guy because, thank God there's somebody out there with passion who isn't so toadying up to the notion of what's politically correct every minute. PC, political correctness, is going to be, you know, you talk about the 70s, they talk about the indulgence of people, you know, the me generation, and you talk about the 80s, you talk about the profligate spending and materialistic indulgence, you know. I mean, the rigid, bored-up-the-ass political correctness of the 90s is enough to make me puke.
The PC is pinching from the left, maybe more so than it's pinching from the right.
Believe me, it's pinching from every angle it can possibly, from which it can possibly come. And I, for one, find it loathsome. And I don't think Oliver was probably that responsible in terms of trying to do this awesome job of tying together all these different theories and make it an entertainment piece as well as an informational piece and so on. And I don't know who could have been. If he couldn't, I don't think anybody else could have been. But I'll take passion over making a politically correct movie any day of the week. So, yes, I had a lot of problems with JFK like everybody else, and thank God the movie was made. You know, and thank God Oliver Stone is out there to do it, because, you know, this press, first of all, I predicted this anyway. When he was doing The Doors, I said, enjoy doing The Doors. He said, why? I said, because whatever film you do after this, they're going to slaughter you. He said, why? I said, because it's your turn now. You know, you've won all the Oscars and the Emmys and the Oscars and the Golden Globes and all this stuff, and it's like your turn in the barrel. You know, Jesus Christ could not have 3 hit pictures in a row in this town without the trash for cash scumbags who run the tabloids and the...
Yeah, but in fairness, it isn't just them. It's a lot of seemingly respectable people who have their misgivings, even as they tip their cap to him as an artist.
Listen, seemingly respectable people who sat with their thumbs up their asses, okay, and just sort of bought the Warren Commission, which nobody buys now, okay, and finally somebody just sort of waved a red flag and said, why aren't you guys doing something about this? I mean, we're spending hundreds of millions of taxpayers' dollars trying to decide whether Bill Clinton, you know, hit Jennifer Flowers in the hoops on some Saturday afternoon down in Baton Rouge or wherever the hell it was supposed to be, but we're not worrying about who assassinated Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy, and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Think about it. If the press put some of their effort into that, instead of wondering about whether Jennifer Flowers actually, you know, did the dirty deed, who gives a shit? Okay, and if they had bothered to put it, maybe they wouldn't have been caught with their pants down and been so defensive about Oliver's somewhat misguided but nonetheless impassioned effort to ask questions about this. And you know what? They're opening up the Kennedy assassination file, so he did something right.
Yeah, that they are.
Okay, so he did something right. The movie is a flawed movie. There's no doubt about it. But the intention and the results were very good. It got this ridiculous press corps that used to be one of the finest in the world, which is now a joke in this decade, finally to admit that maybe they kind of made a mistake and should have paid some attention to this stuff.
Some members of that press corps date back to the 60s,
right,
70s, 50s.
Right. So why didn't they ever do anything about this stuff? Why did they buy all this stuff that nobody buys? You know, why didn't they put the same effort they put into the Clarence Thomas hearings, which were like the nadir of journalism in the history of the world? You know, why didn't they, you know, put some of that effort into like determining who killed 4 of the greatest, most influential people in the history of the last half of this century?
Pretty clear. As you watch.
Doesn't it aggravate you that like nobody really knows who killed the President of the United States, a presidential candidate who was one of the great attorney generals, one of the greatest spiritual and civil rights leaders in the history of humankind, and Malcolm X, who, for all of the controversy surrounding him, obviously had some clear, you know, need to bring the millions of oppressed black people in this country into the fold of what of what Americans should enjoy as benefits of being citizens. Don't you think that it's kind of odd that nobody's bothered to put the same eye that they put into, you know, the Watergate break-in or the Iran-Contra scandal or, you know, pubic hairs on Coke cans? How about the Kennedy assassination? You know, thank God Oliver did it. And I didn't even like the movie, quite frankly, as long as I'm saying all that. Not that much. Not that much, but I loved that the movie was made, and I loved that he made it.
Been out for a while.
Yes.
It's doing big business.
Yes.
I've never met Dolly Parton, but I saw her on some other show, Entertainment Tonight or something.
Right.
She said that you and she hit it off great.
She's almost impossible to talk about because she's the nicest human being that ever lived. I mean, everything you think she's going to be, she is, only more. I mean, I've never seen anybody who is so well-known, so rich, so powerful, and is just like a pure innocent, you know? I mean, you talk to her about things, and she's just, it's like talking to someone who's like newly born. I mean, it's amazing. She has an amazing quality. There's not a person who's around her who doesn't love her. I mean, I'm a pretty tough, cynical guy and so on, and when I met her and spent some time with her, I thought this is one of the truly finest, nicest people that ever lived.
So what do I do?
Maybe you should try dating a different kind of woman. Someone more real. Someone whose insides look better than their outsides instead of the other way around.
Someone whose name begins with an S and ends with an E?
If you know someone named Sylvie.
No.
Simone?
I know a guy named Shane.
Great, ask him out.
I'd rather ask you out. Friday night.
It's a date.
It is?
This brings us to the end of show 2 with James Woods. No, wait a minute, you're not brandishing that again. He's already done, if you've been following these 2 epic programs, done a little alteration on the tie, which he found offensively long.
It was the John Dillinger of ties, and this is about it. Okay,
wait a minute. First you were down in my crotch, and now you're going to be up near my throat. So you're in a couple of sensitive areas.
This is great. This is a great career mover, okay? Down at his crotch, okay? Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore because this baby's gone, okay? Okay? Nice line, though.
Well, we're considering having James Woods back. Would you like this, by the way, as a souvenir?
No, I'm just going to put this over here. Thanks.
Very nice. We'll have James Woods back later in the summer to talk about whatever it is, and I can't quite remember what it might be. Whatever it is we haven't talked about the last couple of nights, that's what we'll do, like in August sometime when I go to wardrobe and get a change of clothes and we have him back. And until then, see you later.
Change of clothes. He's going to go on the next one without a tie. Watch.
Thank you for watching Cleveland Live Music. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. And there's GoFundMe and Patreon information in the video descriptions. Thanks for making the channel grow so much.